Well, hello everybody and welcome to our webinar. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate it. We are going to be running through some new features for our ADX5D Portable Axient Digital Receiver. This includes some new menu features and some features with our friends at Sound Devices as well. I'm going to introduce everybody on the call in just a moment, but before I do, please take a moment to get familiar with the GoToWebinar interface if you've not used it before. We encourage you to use the chat to talk to each other, but if you have got some questions, please put them in the questions window, which I have access to here, and there'll be plenty of time to go through those at the end of the session. But right now, I just want to introduce who we have on because there's some really exciting people. My name's Jack Drury. I look after market development at Shure in the UK. With me in the studio is Stuart Stevens, who is the product marketing manager. We've got Adi from global product management, and we've got Ben from market development in the USA as well. I'd just like to introduce all of those people. So Stuart, if we can come to you first, just tell us what you do at Shure.
Yeah, so I work within the pro audio vertical for the region Western Europe, working closely with Adi. Adi's on the product management side, but my role is to really, when we're developing products like the ADX5D, is to take things like the alpha and beta prototypes out to customers, gather that local regional feedback, and share that with Adi so that then he can take that information and use it to help further develop the products. Yeah. Fantastic.
So with that then, let's go to Adi. Would you like to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about what you do for Shure?
Hi. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are in the world. My name is Adi Neves, and I work in global product management. I'm basically responsible for broadcast products, and what we do is actually bring the voice of the customer to the product development cycle. So feedback that Stuart and Ben and all the other guys in the field brings to us, we actually translate that in actions to go to the product development cycle.
Fantastic. And let's go to Ben next from market development in the USA. Would you like to introduce yourself very quickly?
Yes, greetings everyone. I'm glad to be here. My name is Ben, and I work in market development for the Pro channel in the United States. So I interface with Adi and our product team to get the ideas from the customer back to where it matters, as well as any advanced troubleshooting or education on live sound, theater, broadcast, Broadway, and of course location sound as well. So it's a lot of fun.
Fantastic, thanks Ben. So that's the Shure staff on the call today. We're also really lucky to be joined by Gary from Sound Devices, who looks after applications. Gary, if you could just introduce yourself and give us a couple of lines about what you do.
Sure, hi, thanks everybody, great to be here. I'm Gary, I'm an applications engineer at Sound Devices, and I work with the wireless product at Sound Devices, our mixer recorders as well when it comes to wireless integrations, which is what I'm talking about today. We've got integrations for a wide range of wireless products, including the ADX5D that we'll be talking about.
Fantastic, thank you, Gary. So as you can tell, lots of regions represented on this call. We're all doing this remotely. Some of us are in the UK in the studio here. Some of us are dialing in remotely from all across America. So do please forgive any technical hiccups that we might have, but it's looking good. We should be fine. Let's kick into the content of the day then. If we can go to the agenda, please. We're going to start with Stuart Stevens, who's going to give us an overview of Axient Digital, so what the platform is, how we got to where we are today. And then we are going to look into what's new with ADX5D with Ben. So he's going to take us through the menus and the party dial functions that we've integrated. And then we're going to come to Gary in Sound Devices, who's going to run us through the integration with the Sound Devices mixers and what you can expect to see with that. And then we'll come to a Q&A. So it should be a fairly straightforward session. Without further ado, let's come to Stuart Stevens and the history of Axient Digital. So give us an overview, Stuart. What is the platform? How did we get to where we are today?
Yeah, well, we can't just dive straight in with the ADX5D before explaining Axient Digital as a portfolio. So as a brand, we had two high-tier wireless platforms in the past. We had UHFR and we had Axient Analog. Well, now that we've launched Axient Digital, it's called Axient Analog. It was just Axient at the time. And UHFR was pretty much an industry standard in the world of touring and live events. It had been out for over a decade by the time we launched Axient Digital in 2017. And it was, as I say, everyone had come across channels of UHFR at some point in time. The original Axient platform was the flagship from Shure. It had the features that we added to Axient Digital, like ShowLink, which allowed remote control of transmitters over a Zigbee connection. And it was really just for your ultimate, this cannot fail scenario. And it was extremely powerful, but all those features in an analog wireless system came at a cost. So when we were developing Axient Digital, we knew that digital was going to be the future of our wireless portfolio. We'd already made some progress with platforms like ULXD and QLXD, and it made sense for us that with the way things were going in terms of spectrum auctions, digital and the benefits it offers in terms of spectral efficiency was going to be the way forward. So when we were developing Axient Digital, we wanted something that would replace UHFR and that kind of such a wide range of customers that were using that in touring and live events, but also bring down those features and that technology that we had in the original Axient to a more affordable price point. So it was really about making a scalable system and a wide-ranging portfolio. So with that in mind, we had single receivers, dual and 4-channel receivers with the AD4 range, and 2 different series of transmitters. We had the AD series, which was your UHFR equivalent, just a straightforward connection between transmitter and receiver, and then the ADX series, which had that previous ShowLink remote control. So you could, any adjustment you would make with a transmitter in your hand, you could now make remotely, either from the receiver or through wireless workbench software. And that kind of, as a platform, as you'd expect, it was hugely successful in the world of live and touring. But the introduction of our ADX1M micro body pack transmitter also allowed us to make kind of big improvements into the world of theatre as well. We've had a lot of success in theatre due to the ergonomic design of that body pack, the lack of external antenna, and that 2-way ShowLink remote control feature. But we always knew that we wanted to continue and build upon this portfolio into the world of broadcast, so sports broadcast and TV and film. And over the past year, we've made a lot of new product introductions that have grown the portfolio to what it is today. So we had the collaboration with the Canadian company Q5X to introduce their digital transmitters. So their Player Mic and Aqua Mic were added to the Axient Digital family or compatibility. We launched the AD3 plug-on transmitter for boom operations or for just spot mics. And then ultimately the most recent addition is the ADX5D portable receiver, which is what we're here to discuss today.
So we can now offer a complete broadcast portfolio with Axient Digital, right?
Yes, that is the end goal. And the goal is to continue building on this, which is why myself and Ben and Adi are continuing to have conversations with customers in this broadcast sphere to understand what do we need to do next. But for now, the ADX5D is the new kid on the block.
So just as a very, very top level thing, what is it about Axient Digital that makes it so good for this type of application?
Well, the digital benefits can't be really underestimated. The spectral efficiency it offers by being a digital modulation platform, the dynamic range, because in previous analog systems, you would have to deal with companding to overcome the inherent kind of limitations of an FM modulation link. With digital systems, we're using a digital modulation to transmit from a transmitter to the receiver, and it means that our dynamic range, because the audio is being converted to a digital bit stream, we can now transmit 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz full bandwidth audio with in excess of 120 dB of dynamic range. So for a kind of TV and film application, the dynamic range is really key. You can have those really quiet moments on a scene, and then the next minute stuff's exploding and chaos reigns, and the system can cope with it. The other benefit of digital as well is that all those adjustments that you would previously have to make to overcome those FM limitations, such as optimizing the sensitivity in the transmitter side beforehand, all of the gain adjustments are now done on the receiver end in the digital realm. So it's from a workflow point of view, it's just a lot more streamlined and easier to manage.
And before we go into a close look at the ADX5D, can we just touch on ShowLink very quickly? Because you mentioned it earlier about that Zigbee connection. What is it? Why do we like it so much?
So ShowLink, as I mentioned previously, was introduced with the old Axient analog platform. And it really helps you in those kind of mission critical environments where either you take a hit of interference and you need to retune your transmitter and receiver at the same time, or in some instances, we've seen in theatre particularly, and TV and film, if you've buried the transmitter under a costume, it's very difficult for you to gain access to that transmitter if you need to make adjustments. The kind of beauty and the benefits of having this two-way communication over ShowLink is that now the person operating the system can just make those adjustments remotely from either receiver or from wireless workbench, and the transmitters, assuming you're using the ADX range, will follow those changes. So yeah, from a workflow management point of view, it's just extremely powerful and a useful tool.
Excellent. Okay, well at that point then, should we have a little look at the ADX5D? I think we've got a video that we can play.
Yeah,
that should run through some of the features. So Timo, if we can have the video up on the screen, please. Okay, so that's ADX5D in a nutshell. Stuart, let's just run through these features one more time so that everyone is clear about what this device does.
Yeah, so with the ADX kind of prefix, that signifies this as being a ShowLink enabled device. So it's a dual channel receiver with that ShowLink remote control for ADX series transmitters. As with the other rack mounted receivers, this is true digital diversity reception. So we have diversity on both channels for A and B antennas to really just help with dropout resistance and the operating range. Depending on which region you're in, this is a wide tuning device as well. So, for example, in the UK here, our default range is A band, which would go from 470 to 636. The regions, the frequency ranges in your region would vary. And as I mentioned previously, we've using advanced digital modulation in this to just really take advantage of the spectral efficiency offered by digital systems. The one thing with digital is there is some latency involved, but we've got this down to 2 milliseconds, so it's really kind of inaudible. And then lastly, with the networked control, we have the wireless workbench software as well as a channels app, so you can monitor and manage the devices from your laptop with wireless workbench or through the channels app on iOS and now Android as well. And then just one of the things that we've had with the ADX5D is we brought this to market after spending a lot of time alpha testing and beta testing with customers in the marketplace. And one of those was John Ehrlicher, who I believe you know well, Ben. Do you want to just tell us a bit about that relationship and how he came to adopt the ADX5D?
Absolutely. You know, it's always funny when we're a manufacturer, we make a product and a product is what we think it should be used as. And it's always very interesting to me that people use it in new and unique ways. So a quick little backstory about how the emergence of the location sound market happened is we had Axient Digital, of course, and our rack mount receivers. And We also make a version that's shown on the screen here with the DC power input for broadcast. And the idea is really for broadcasters to have a redundant power supply. And if the AC power goes down for whatever reason, they could switch over. But along the lines, even before ADX5D Portable came out, somebody said, hey, why can't I just use this in my sound card? I run on a 12 volt or 14 volt battery. This may work out just well. And we've had a lot of adoption with sound mixers and location sound, episodic, film, using full-blown DC powered versions of the Axient Digital system. And of course, John has been with us since the beginning, helping us tweak our ADX5D, our Axient Digital, and trying to enhance some of the feature sets and giving the people what they want. But it's really cool to see like a product that we never really intended for that market being used as such. And now that we do have a product intended for the market, it just really rounds out the portfolio. And if you get a chance, check out John's IMDb credits and all the fantastic shows he's worked on. And he'll be the first to tell you how happy he is with his new sound and control using ShoreLink of Axient Digital.
Excellent. And with the new firmware that we launched in August, that introduced some features to kind of build on the features that were already there at launch. Do you want to just take us through those new features that are available?
Sure. We're going to cover these in the video in just a little bit as well in depth, but we did add some new features such as Party Dial, which has been a very well asked for item. So you can switch between frequencies quickly and follow around a lot of different talent quickly. Menu structure, so we've revised that for easy access and making the most commonly used things become at the front of the food chain there. And then, of course, what everybody is really interested in, and we're very happy to have Gary here talk about our third-party integration with sound devices and other mixers. So all these kind of new things and the latest firmware update for the ADX5D just enhance the functionality and make more control and just your life easier. It's just a very easy system to use more than ever.
Okay, well, you've very kindly put a video together for us, Ben. So let's settle in, have a little look and see what all of this stuff does.
Hi, it's Ben with Shure. In this section, we're going to discuss custom groups, Party Dial, and menu updates. So first off, custom groups are a feature of Shure Axient Digital and select other Shure wireless receivers. With Axient Digital, there are 6 custom user groups with an ability to have up to 60 channels per group. The built-in groups in Axient Digital receivers simplify scanning for open frequencies. Typically, one will perform what is called a group scan, and the receiver will scan the frequencies of that group for clean and open frequencies. So why one would be interested in creating and using a custom group of frequencies? There are 3 main benefits that come to mind, especially for users of ADX5D out in the field. The first benefit is Party Dial. We will discuss Party Dial more in detail in a moment. However, in order to use Party Dial, you will need a set of pre-programmed frequencies contained in a custom group. The second is built-in groups that are in Axient Digital receivers do not take into account of any prohibited frequencies. For example, in many major cities in the USA, there are TV channels which are reserved for public safety and are illegal for use by wireless microphone users. Just performing a group scan may find a frequency that is clean, but may be illegal to use. Custom groups can solve this issue. You could even create a custom group for each city that you plan on working in that takes into account the public safety channels of that particular location. Lastly, many sound card mixers often use filtered antennas in their cart setups. Performing a regular group scan may find frequencies outside of the filter's antenna range. Custom groups can solve this problem by ensuring scanned frequencies of that particular custom group will be inside of the desired filtered range. In order to populate frequencies inside a custom group, we will use Wireless Workbench to ensure the frequencies are compatible and then store them into the ADX5D hardware. Then when out in the field, we can scan for open frequencies just within these groups. Let's go to Wireless Workbench now.
In this section, we'll use Wireless Workbench to create a custom group of frequencies and deploy it to the ADX5D. This version of Wireless Workbench I am using today is 6.14.1, and this is similar on a Mac, which I'm on currently, or a PC. So the first thing we'll do is we'll go to the Frequency Coordination tab and create that custom group of frequencies. What I plan to do is create a custom group of frequencies that observe public safety channels in the New York metro region, for example, as well as fit into a 40 megahertz span say, a pair of filtered antennas that may be deployed on your sound cart. So we'll go to the Spectrum tab, and we will do TV channels, and I will pop in a zip code for New York. Because I am online with the green icon here, or the dot, we know that it'll pull in the latest, greatest information. And we can see all of the exclusion regions, including the public safety channels here. In major metro areas in the US, many cities have public safety channels that you're not allowed to operate on. So I'll click Save, and what we see here, if we zoom in with the mouse wheel, some exclusions where we don't want frequencies to be put, and that is a good place to start. Second, we want to do some inclusion groups and tell Wireless Workbench where we would like to put our frequencies, because right now it'll put them anywhere that Axient Digital is capable of, and we want to kind of tell it to be into a certain range. So we'll use an inclusion group for that. Click on the gear icon for inclusion group, and we'll make a new list with the Manage button. We can call it whatever we want. List 1 is fine. And this group as well, group 1 is fine. And you can rename this or call it, let's just call it 500 through 540 for a 40 megahertz example of where we're going to put frequencies. And then we will click on that and add a new specification to where we want to actually put the frequencies. So we could do TV channels, or in this case, I'm just going to use a 500 to 540 megahertz swath of spectrum. And this will keep it easy to remember. So I'll save that, and I'll save it again. And now we're all set up. We've got our inclusion region where we're going to put some frequencies. We have an exclusions, including the public safety bands where we want to stay out of. And the next thing to do is just add some frequencies. We can do this a couple of different ways. If your device is already online, you could pull them in. In this case, I did it as you would, not having a device online, and we'll just select the frequency here manually. We'll do the Shure, the ADX5D-A is what we're using here, and the G57 band. The standard RF profile is okay. The RF zone is the default, that's fine. This inclusion group is what we just created. We can select that right now, 500 through 540, and we can put in as many frequencies as we want, say 24 primary, and hit add. Now, we have a couple things that just happened. We see that the G57 range is populated here in the blue bar, letting us know the range. And then we know that we have 0 out of 24 frequencies here to be calculated under the ADX5D. If you did it the other way around and you pulled in frequencies from your inventory tab, you could always right click on this bar or this banner here and add it to the inclusion group that we created. Since already we did that when we made these frequencies populate here, we don't have to do that. You can click the calculate button here, and every time you hit calculate, it'll give you a new set of compatible frequencies. So we know they're compatible because they're all green and everything checks out. What's interesting is you can see that it put them in the inclusion group of 500 to 540, but it also observed the television stations that are not legal to be used. So, you can make this window whatever you'd like, or maybe you don't want to use an inclusion group. You could just observe like public safety in a certain metro area. So with that being said, normally we would just do a scan here and we can deploy. And yes, we can still do that with Wireless Workbench. But for this exercise, we're more interested in creating these custom group of frequencies that are predetermined to be compatible. So these frequencies here are all set, ready to go. And what we're going to do now is we're going to export them to a custom group file. And there's this little arrow icon here. It says Export Custom Groups. If I click on that, a dialog box will come up, and I'll go to my desktop, and I can just create a new custom group. We'll just call it Test Group. And that's it. We're all done there. The next step will be to import it to our wireless device, our ADX5D. And in order to do that, we're going to have to get it online and make sure that we're on the network via a ShowLink access point. So we'll shift our focus over to the inventory tab. In order to get the ADX5D as part of the network, we have to go to our access point here and right click, go to properties, go to ShowLink over here in this tab. And instead of FFFF, which will not put it on any network, we're going to create a unique identifier. And it could be any of these, I think they're like hexadecimal or whatever. I use beef or something, so it's easy to remember. And if I hit apply and confirm, this will put this ShowLink access point onto this specific network ID. Now, all we have to do on the portable device or the ADX5D is set the ShowLink mode as network, and then also make the same network ID match this identifier here. So I'll close out of here and we'll do that now. To get this on the network, what we'll have to do is we'll have to go to the main menu under Device Configuration, and we'll select our network mode here, which will be under Advanced and under Show Link. The Show Link mode that it's in currently is the direct mode, which will allow us to directly control, but we're going to put this in associated with the access point. So we'll change that from direct to network and hit OK. And remember, the net ID that we set in Wireless Workbench was B for BEEF, and we'll just change that accordingly here to match as well. So we'll go BEEF, and device must reboot to apply Show Link settings. Perfect. Hit OK, and it'll reboot, and we'll go back over to Workbench and catch it over there. Back in our Wireless Workbench session, we'll notice that the ADX5D is here in the inventory window. So it is on the network. The green indicates that we can talk to it. You can do all the usual things like identify a device or flash it or set a pin. What we're going to do now is push the custom group of frequencies to it. So we'll just right click on this to go to the properties window. This will bring up this window here, and the usual things that you're used to in Axient Digital are all here. You can change just about anything you'd like, but we're going to be going to the gear icon, and under the gear icon, there's a thing called custom groups. So what we'll do is we'll click on custom groups, and the group name here is empty. Remember, there are 6 groups, user 1 through user 6, with up to 60 frequencies per group. What we'll do is we'll go to edit, and we'll import a group that we made previously. In the desktop here, there's a test group I made, and under default, there will be 80 standard G57 CUG, and the CUG file is the custom group file. So I'll double click on that, and just like that, it'll save what we did. Now, sometimes this window might pop to the back, so if that happens to you, just look for it. But we have it here, and it will say all of our frequencies that we did in the previous step. And remember, we set our frequencies from 500 to 540, observing the exclusions for public safety and other things. And this looks accurate. So we'll just hit apply and close this window. Now, we close this back out and go back to Wireless Workbench. Everything, our custom groups are now inside of this device, and we can use them for scanning ability, or we can use them for party dial ability, which we'll discuss in a little bit. So let's go check it out and on the actual device itself to see where they are and how to use them. If we go to channel 1, for example, and I go to the radio menu, normally we can change the frequency or the group, and of course we're interested in the group. So let's go there. There are the built-in groups, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then there's a user group. And as we see here, user group 1 now contains the frequencies that we previously pushed. These frequencies will remain here until you decide to change them, and they are in the device. So let's go back out and see what you can do with those frequencies. For example, when you get out to the field and you need to do a group scan to find open frequencies, we can go to channel 1, we can go to group scan and start the scan. And it'll go through all of the preset groups of frequencies, including the factory presets, as well as the custom groups that we've pushed to the device. This is extremely powerful because now we are scanning in that custom group only the frequencies that we said where it should play into those inclusion groups. It will typically come up and say group 5 is the most open because it has the most amount of frequencies built in from the factory. But if we just toggle over and instead of group 5, select user group 1, we can actually deploy these frequencies with just a click of the button to all of our ADX5Ds that are on the same network. Or if it's just this unit, it will deploy it to channels 1 and 2 of the unit as well. As we can see, it did a scan and it found 18 frequencies open. We can deploy that just by toggling over and hitting deploy, and it will do so. Everything flashes, deployment complete, and you've successfully deployed in the right filter range of maybe your antennas, as well as avoided any problems with public safety or TV channels in your area.
Party dial. Party dial is a term used with wireless microphones to describe the ability to switch between preset frequencies easily and quickly. Oftentimes, especially on reality TV shows, there may be more transmitters than available channels on the sound mixer. Party dial allows a user to select from a custom group of frequencies quickly. Let's dive into the ADX5D unit and enable party dial.
So with party dial, we're going to enable it by going into the device configuration menu, and it'll be the first item, party dial. We'll click this, and we'll go into a mode here. Will show us what we can select through. We see the G means group and C means channel. So right now it's on the main group 1, which is a pre-programmed group. We don't want that. We want to use the group that we've made, which is one of the custom groups, user group 1. So in order to change this, what you can do is you can exit out, and what we'll do is we'll go over to channel 1, and we will go to the radio menu. And here, because we're in group 1, we want to select that user group that's in here. So I can toggle over group until we get to group 1, and there's our frequencies, and those look familiar. I'll select just the first frequency now, just for to get it on that specific group. And then if we go back out and we go into the device configuration party dial menu, you'll notice on the left-hand side, because of channel 1 is what we were working with, group is now user 1, and channel is 1. The beauty of this is that I can select and toggle between this custom group of frequencies just by pressing up or down. And if I press, user 1, channel 2, or user 1, channel 3, it will come up and it will show us what is going on with that frequency. For example, we have a transmitter on this frequency here with group user 1, channel 3, and you can see the lights light up there with the blue lights, and the quality meter lights up. We also see that there is a device ID called TAL1. I named it Talent1. Now, if we go over to the next one in the group, it will say user group 1, channel 4, for example, and that will be Talent2. Provided you set a device ID on those transmitters, you can identify which transmitter is which by referring to that device ID, which is a unique identifier. So that's a very handy tip if you're going to be following around a bunch of different transmitters or talent. You might want to name it the name of the talent or the actor or their role, etc. You can just simply toggle through it as much as you like. Maybe somebody gives you a preset list of frequencies. You can enter those in Workbench and do it just like that. And the next step, we will show you how to put this in manually if you did not have access to Wireless Workbench. To access the Custom Groups menu, we're going to go into the menu by pressing the Enter key. It's under Device Configuration. It's under Advanced, under Device RF, and then Custom Groups. Once inside the Custom Groups menu, you will see the group number, which right here is U1. As we mentioned previously, there are 6 user groups with up to 60 channels each, and a frequency. Essentially how it goes is you will go to set, let's say, user group 1, channel 1, and then I can pick a frequency here of my choosing. And that can be whatever you like, or to match up the other transmitters that you already have. In this instance, we'll pick 475 even. Once you're done with it, you can go to the next one, channel here, and load another one into channel 2. So you can keep going on and on until you get all of your frequencies programmed in, and you can do this manually here, or as we showed previously, you can do it using Workbench. The load and the clear sections here are pretty cool. The load section, actually, if we go to it right now, will show you that it will say load copies the custom group data to 0 other receivers. Right now, there are no other receivers on the network. This is the only one. But if you had multiple ADX5Ds networked using the access point, or you had other Axient Digital receivers, duals or quads also on the network, basically anything that will flash when you say identify things on the network, this will copy the same custom group to everybody. So if you're out in the field and you have more than one Axient Digital receiver and you want to share that with others, you can, provided that you are on the network. So that's what the load function does. And then the clear function basically just resets the custom groups on this to 0. So it says clear, erases all custom group data on this receiver if you want to go do a new shoot or put a new set of frequencies in and clean out everything that's there. So that's how to do the custom groups using the front panel controls. Menu updates. With this latest firmware update, there are some new changes to the menu structure. The first change to mention is the circular menu structure. If you take a look at the scroll position bar on the right side, you can see the position of the menu. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, the menu will wrap around and come back to the topmost menu item. The second change is the position of menu items. We moved some of the most often used menu items to the forefront for easy access. Lastly, there is a new shortcut menu. By pressing and holding the X or the power key, you can bring up the shortcut menu. This menu now provides quick access to each channel as well as the 3.5mm output level. This concludes the section regarding custom groups, party dial, and menu updates.
Ben, thank you so much for putting that video together for us. That was fantastic. If people have more questions or they want to see more content like this or they want to read some manuals, where can they go?
Right in the tech portal. We have lots of good information there. Absolutely.
Fantastic, and you can see the URL there. Feel free to go there. Lots of really useful things. Thank you, Ben. Really appreciate your time for that. Let's dive into the next bit. Some might say the main event, although we won't say that. Gary from Sound Devices is on the call. Hello, Gary. Would you take us through the integration with your lovely mixers, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to roll another video here that's going to talk about the integration of the ADX5D with Sound Devices 8 series mixer recorder. So we've got an integration where you're able to access the most commonly used functions from the ADX5D right on the big color screen of your 8 series mixer recorder. So let's go ahead and take a look at that video. Hi, I'm Gary Trenda. I'm an applications engineer for Sound Devices. And today we're going to talk about the integration of a Shure ADX5D receiver with our SL2 slot on an 888 series mixer recorder. First thing, this is the ADX5D, and to put it into the super slot on the SL2, you want to make sure that you've got the DB25 backplate. So from there, we've factory reset this unit, so we're acting like we're installing a brand new ADX5D into your SL2. We're just going to press it into the SL2, pop it in there until the connector seats in the back, and then we're going to connect our A and B antenna connections onto the front. Okay, so now that we've installed the ADX5D into the SL2, we're going to go into the main menu and we're going to scroll down until we see the super slot option. We're going to select super slot and you'll see the SL2 receiver overview. From here, we're going to use the return favorite toggle and we're going to toggle into options for the SL2. So that first option is receiver slot power. We're going to go into receiver slot power and we're going to turn on the power for slot 1. And you'll see this says detecting receiver type. This can be an important troubleshooting step if you're having any trouble with a slot receiver. This completes the full setup of a new slot receiver with the 8 series mixer recorder. Sets up all your defaults. In this case, initializes an AES digital audio connection to the receiver. So now this is powered on. We're going to go out of here. And the last option on here is use wireless names. This is something we do support with the ADX5D. So we're going to turn on use wireless names. What this means is if we name our transmitter, that name will show up on both the ADX5D and it'll flow through to the assigned channel on the 8 series mixer recorder. If you've just installed your SL2, make sure the expansion port is on. This expansion port is the connection between your 8 series mixer recorder and the SL2 slot chassis. We're also going to look at version info here quickly. Make sure you're on at least firmware version 8.5 or newer, because that's where the support for ADX5D is included. Using the select toggle, we can select A1 or A2. That's our first and second channel. In this case, I'm going to select A1. We're going to look at the information we get for the first channel. There's some boxes on here that are going to show you mute and overload, battery level, your A and B antenna RSSI, your Q for your quality meter. You're seeing the RF timeline is already starting to populate. Below that, we've got frequency and group and channel numbers, along with an associated TV channel, if that's available. I'm going to start out with the receiver options menu. It'll show you your device ID. It'll show you your channel name. Here, we're going to rename our first channel. That'll also have renamed the channel on the ADX5D receiver. RF band, as we mentioned, was G57. If you have a reason to change that, that's available here. And then there's a tone generator available if you want to check levels into your 8 series mixer recorder. Your RF history level, here you have the option to use either the RSSI or the quality meter, the Q meter for your history. I'll set it to quality. And then show receiver info. This is another good thing to double check. Make sure you're on at least firmware version 1.3.26. We're going to go back to our main channel menu. And if we want to get a transmitter set up, the first thing we're probably going to want to do is start with an RF scan. So I'm going to use the mic toggle and toggle into RF scan. You can see here we've got a couple of options to decide on with our scan. We can do a full width scan, which is going to scan the entire G57 range that we've got our receiver set up for. Or we could scan some subset of that in 5 megahertz steps. Once you're in this screen, your take wheel here is able to scroll frequency And then the other thing you can do, let's say I got up to 537 and decided that I wanted to select this as an available frequency. I can actually use my select wheel to zoom in on 537. So if I want to select that frequency, I just click on the select wheel, and it's going to say assign frequency to receiver A1. I'm going to click again for OK. Now I can get out of the scan menu, and you can see that I've assigned 537 megahertz to my first channel. So now that I've assigned that, I can take my, in this case I have an ADX1D transmitter, and I can select IR sync. It says sync transmitter to receiver. I've got my transmitter on. I'm aligning the two different windows and clicking OK, and it'll say IR sync started, and then it'll say that the IR sync is successful. So now I'm seeing my ADX1 transmitter coming in, and you can see the red on the RF history because I had the antenna very close to the SL2 receive antennas, but now that I've moved it back onto the table, you can see that purple in the timeline telling you have 5 bars of quality, and you see the same thing on the quality meter. And as we discussed in the options menu here, you're also able to select RSSI if you'd prefer. So we'll go back out, and now you'll see that's going to be green rather than purple on the RF timeline. You get some information about the ADX1. It tells you the power level that the transit power set to. It shows you your battery level. It does show you your A and B RSSI and your quality. We talked about on the bottom here, RF scan, IR sync. There's also the ability to put the receiver into standby if you need to, and the ability to adjust the output gain. Right now we're at +12, which is the default, but let's say I want to check that, and with my select wheel, adjust it down to 0 dB of gain. So now that the receiver is set up, I can go to channel 1 on my 8 series mixer recorder, and I can select the input. If I go into my input menu, you can see right now I'm on mic line input 1. I just scroll over to A1, which is the, as we discussed, the first channel on the first slot. If I select that, you also notice in your channel source menu here, you've got a quick way to get to your receiver setup if you want to get back to that receiver menu. I'm going to back out of that, go back into channel 1. And now you can see on my first channel, if I back all the way into my main menu, that the name that I gave to channel 1 has carried all the way through, and you can see it on the screen there, that channel 1 is now named Bert. So we are all set with our ADX1 into the ADX5D and all the way to the 8 series mixer recorder.
Brilliant video. Thank you so much, Gary. That was really comprehensive and I think showed everything. I think everyone's happy to stick around for some questions. We've already had some come in on GoToWebinar. So we'll go through those now. If you've got any other questions, please feel free to put them in. I think we've got 15 minutes left, so that should give us plenty of time to work through some stuff. The first one that I've got here is actually for Gary, based on the video that we've just seen. In your first setup of something like this, are there any tips and tricks, anything that is likely to go wrong, anything that you've seen or that we should just know about to make sure that first time is as smooth as possible?
Sure. I think one thing is setting the band. In our case, we use G57. I get questions about that sometimes with making sure that all matches up between your transmitters and your receivers, and right out of the box, sometimes it won't be the same band. Another thing that we've got on the SL2 slot chassis that plugs into the 8 series mixer recorder is there's an RF level indicator, and we've got a yellow and a red LED on there. We got the yellow LED set up so that should light up about the time that you also see a RF overload indicator on the ADX5D. And then the red's going to light up if you're approaching RF overload on the SL2, which is a bit higher level than when a digital receiver is going to start to overload. So that's something good to keep an eye on. Just keep an eye on your RF levels. If you are experiencing overload, you can decide if you've got plenty of range. Do you want to lower your transmit power? There's an RF pad available on the SL2 that you could engage if you need to. Other options you could think about is changing your filtering, or that depends on your setup. But I think those are your basic setup things. And then we did talk about the slot power option. There's a communication that happens between the 8 series mixer recorder and the ADX5D. And if you have any communication problems, repowering it from that slot menu reinitializes that communication and can help out with the occasional difficulty there.
Wonderful. Thanks, Gary. That's really helpful. Getting more questions come in now. Stuart, I've got one here for you, actually. In Gary's video, we saw him switch between the RF indicator and the quality meter. A couple of questions here just on what the difference between those two things are.
So the RF meter is giving you the RSSI measurement, or the received signal strength indicator. And this is something that we've had with previous analog systems as well. It's basically a measurement of how much RF energy is hitting my antennas, how much am I receiving at the front end. The channel quality is something that was introduced with Axient Digital, both in the portable receiver, the ADX5D, and the AD4 rack-mounted receivers, and that is an indication of your RF signal to noise ratio, or your carrier to noise ratio. And essentially, unlike an analog system where you would be dealing with squelch, and your operating range, for example, would be determined by this squelch setting, and as you approach the limits of that noise floor, you could adjust squelch to say, I'm willing to let a bit more RF noise in return for a wider operating range. With a digital system, it is perfectly clean audio right up until the signal drops. You either have enough information there to recover the signal, or you don't. And what that channel quality indicator shows you is, not only in conjunction with the RSSI, not only am I receiving my signal, but what is the quality of that data and information that I am receiving. The example we always like to give is, you might do that scenario where you've turned up on set, you've done a frequency scan, you've coordinated compatible frequencies for the shoot, you've then tested the operating range, everything's good to go, so you go, right, I'm going to go to the catering truck. You come back after your lunch break, another crew's turned up, or somebody else has turned up with another Axient Digital system, and they are either on top of or very close to one of your frequencies. What the channel quality indicator would show you there is, you're still receiving signal, but because that new frequency is close to one of your chosen frequencies, that channel quality indicator would drop to say, you may have before had 30 dB of carrier to noise ratio. There's something new in the RF environment that is impacting this frequency, and we cannot guarantee that you will have maybe the same operating range or the same performance. So in that scenario, you might want to go back and maybe do another scan, or move to a different previously coordinated backup frequency. So it kind of, yeah, you use them both at the same time. RSSI is, am I receiving enough signal? Channel quality is, how good is the information I'm receiving?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Stuart. Really good answer there. Ben, I have a question for you here. We looked at wireless workbench earlier. I think this is going to relate to that. And in your coordination that you did, what would happen if you had some devices that you knew were going to be on site from a third party? How would you be able to incorporate those into a coordination?
That's a great question. I mean, there's a couple different ways to approach that. One would be to put those devices in as exclusions. In the video portion that we covered, we did inclusions where you told it where to put it, but you could also put other devices that are exclusions if you knew where those frequencies were, and Wireless Workbench would be intelligent enough to stay away from them. Even if you didn't have a list of frequencies, as long as those transmitters were on and broadcasting, they would show up in the scan data on Wireless Workbench, and you could use that information to get around and work around those other frequencies that would be on site. There's a couple different ways to slice it. I think the magic of it, to me, and the custom groups, is once you get it set, you can go anywhere ever and just hit the scan button, and it'll take an awareness of what's happening in the spectrum, and without having much intervention. So you give it like a playground to play in, and maybe those 24 frequencies that we, in the example we had there, weren't free or clean, and there was something there, it would know that and kind of work around those. So there's a couple different ways to slice it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ben. Right, Addy, I've got a couple of questions for you, actually, so we'll come to you now. The first one that I'm going to send your way is, does the ADX5 work with the SL6?
I guess that actually would be a better question for Gary, but there is some, the ADX5D actually fits perfectly on the SL6 and works with the SL6, not a problem at all. There is a question of what is connected to the SL6. I would like to take that, Gary.
Sure. Yeah. So if you've got an SL6 slot chassis connected to a Scorpio, which is part of the 8 series, it's the same integration as what we showed with the SL2 slot chassis. If you have an older sound devices mixer recorder like a 688, then it just treats the receiver as a unislot receiver. It uses the analog output. You don't get the same integration with the menus on the mixer recorder, but you're able to plug it in and send audio into your mixer recorder and then just access your controls on the front panel of the ADX5D.
Wonderful. Thanks, Gary. Addy, if I can come to the second question for you now. This is a product feature question, I think, or a future product feature question. Is there any plan to release a Zigbee dongle so we can use the Shure Plus Channels app with an ADX5D without the AD610?
Yeah, the Zigbee implementation, it's very proprietary, and it's just not something like off-the-shelf dongle or something you could use. So the easiest way that we see now to use channels with the ADX5D would be getting an AD610 and using the Ethernet port. You can connect a very small Wi-Fi router to it. And some people use actually a battery pack, like a power bank, to power both. And you have a completely portable access point. And then you will use that Wi-Fi to feed information into channels and then have access to the receiver through channels.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, Stuart, I've got a question here that I think is probably best for you. You mentioned the Q5X player mics. Are you able to use the older Q5X player mics with ADX5D?
Unfortunately not. So those older Q5X versions were compatible with the analog system, UHFR. They had a mode in there that would work on the FM transmission that was in those systems. Because Axient Digital is using a digital modulation scheme that is proprietary, that collaboration we did with Q5X was basically enabling them to implement our transmitter technology into their form factors. So unfortunately, those older analog Q5X transmitters wouldn't be compatible with this platform.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Addy, I'm going to come back to you. I've got another product feature question. Any hope of show link while in a super slot?
This is a global webinar, and the feature set changed from country to country. So we don't have any plans of changing anything at this point in regards to the difference between feature set from country to country. So the best way is to call your local dealer or your local market development rep and discuss with them the feature set for each country, because it all depends where you are in the world. You're going to have different feature sets.
Wonderful. Really appreciate the answer. Thank you very much, Addy. Right, I want to try and get a couple more questions in. I know that we've only got 5 minutes left. So let's come to this question for Ben. Ben, thanks for the webinar. We rock. Excellent. Is it possible to change the transmitter power via the mixer, via the SD mixer, sound devices mixer? So this might also be for Gary as well. Ben and Gary, I'll let you to double team this one.
I'd have to defer to Gary. I'm not sure about that functionality. Can you change transmitter output power, Gary, over sound devices integration?
Yeah, right now we display the output power, so we're reading it from the receiver, but we're not changing it from the 8 series mixer recorder.
Wonderful. Thank you for that answer. And then I think we've got time for one more question, and this could be a bit of a long one for you, Stuart. And it's to do with the show link infrastructure again. But if we wanted to have an auto switching thing happen, I think that a couple of people have seen that with Axient Digital, you can deploy frequencies automatically if there's interference. Is that possible to do with ADX5D? And what do you need to do it?
So I believe the feature they're talking about is the interference detection and critically avoidance. So if you take a hit of interference, Axient Digital, because we have this ShowLink 2.4 communication, is able to switch frequencies on both the receivers and the transmitter through that ShowLink technology. The kind of critical bit of hardware you need for that is a device called the Spectrum Manager, and this is essentially the brains of your frequency management. You would do a coordination within Wireless Workbench for both primary frequencies and a number of backup frequencies. You would then deploy this into the rack-mounted Spectrum Manager, and then that handles all of the frequency management. It continuously monitors both the primary frequencies and the backup frequencies. And in a world where everything is racked, it's a lot more simple because it's a case of just connecting Ethernet cables and then having an AD610, so that if a racked receiver detects a hit of interference, it sends a message to the Spectrum Manager to say, please provide a new frequency. That is then changed on the receiver, and over 2.4 ShowLink, it changes on the transmitter at the same time, almost instantaneously, assuming you have it set up in the automatic mode. Obviously, when you have a portable receiver and there's no physical connection to this, it became a little bit more complicated, and our engineers had to scratch their heads a little bit to figure out how it was going to work. But it is possible with this. So as I mentioned previously, you need the Spectrum Manager to handle the monitoring of the frequencies. You need the AD610 access point to manage that ShowLink network, configured in the way as Ben demonstrated in that video as a host for the ADX5 receivers. And then within the menu, you would have to, there's an option in there, I believe, called interference management, where you would say, do you want manual or automatic resolution of interference? In manual mode, you would get a warning to say, you've taken a hit of interference, how would you like to proceed? In that automatic mode, it would operate the same as the racked receivers. It would signal that it had interference to the Spectrum Manager. The Spectrum Manager would look at its pool of available backups, and it would deploy the kind of best available backup based on kind of the RSSI metering and so on. And it would deploy that to the receiver first, and then ShowLink would update the transmitters at the same time.
Brilliant. Thank you, Stuart. Excellent answers. And I want to thank everybody that's been on this webinar from all around the world. It's fantastic when we all get together like this. Really appreciate it. And thank you for tuning in. We hope to see you on the next one. I'm sure this won't be the last, but until then, goodbye from all of us here at Shure and Sound Devices.